This video is going to be about the good things For Honor has given us, such as deep vein thrombosis. You made it, welcome back, ya BEA, ya beautiful souls. For Honor has had an insane track record. We are about to enter the year 9 season of For Honor. Absolutely insane. 9 years of this game. Now, I played this game in the beta when it first came out. I was watching it like a hawk. It was probably my favorite game that I was looking for back when I was a young lad. Now I'm an unk. I am boosted in all my games. As you guys know, we are basically Afira mains, and we're doing Afira shenanigans and Afira activities out there. And I've played every single character in this game. They're all my favorite characters. For Nuxia, Afira, Hitakiri, Shinobi, Warden, every single character out there. You come into my streams and I guarantee you'll see me play every single one, and you can request one too. Now, the main point of this video though is that For Honor is going to be on its year 9, and it does have a 10-year plan supposedly, but we've seen those 10-year plans before on Destiny, but that got canned pretty shortly. Whereas For Honor has an insane track record in Rainbow Six Siege, and I'm going to say that For Honor has had an amazing year. I think the next year just might be even the best. Will it be the last? That remains to be seen when Ubisoft eventually, or regrettably, is going to be selling their company to Tencent or maybe any other company out there. And that brings me to the point of saying For Honor is still in a really good shape. I've made plenty of videos about this, if players should come back to For Honor, or even what type of heroes we have been getting. And I'd say overall, it's been pretty positive. Sure, there are a few drawbacks, such as Lawbringer's incredibly weird role catcher, the reworks of certain characters, like my boy Conquer, just absolutely get butchered, but there have been a lot of great changes for the For Honor community. Especially for me, I have been just really ecstatic about photo mode. Photo mode is something that should have been added years ago, and they basically kind of screwed content creators over like 2 years ago, where they removed the ability to use Ansel. And Ansel was a program from NVIDIA. If you had NVIDIA drivers, you could go into the game and record real time, or just record any type of pictures, basically what photo mode is today. Right now you can make your amazing pictures of your favorite characters. Vita Neon, one of the greatest OG For Honor content creators out there, used this tremendously in a really high degree, and he was pretty pissed off that they didn't allow him to go into a custom game and take awesome edits of his characters and realize the true potential of For Honor. If For Honor had a system like Overwatch, where you can go into a game, a past game, save, download the game for any purpose whatsoever, there were so many things you could do with Ansel back then, but they removed it. But now that photo mode is back in, it's such a good thing. And so I want to go over a lot of the good changes that For Honor has given us the past, I'd say, 2 years, from what I remember at least, because my brain is, I think Sleepy Joe Biden is starting to get to me now, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. The For Honor's been out for almost 10 years. It's about 9 years right now. And so I'm starting to get worn and tore down. And I'm starting to get back shots from everybody that plays this game. Now, let's just quickly go over some of the things that I have really enjoyed. And that's gonna be Warden with the plot armor has just been getting so much adjustments and buffs. I think a lot of the Warden mains are incredibly happy. Warden has gotten insane feat changes. They're giving him unique feats to make him stronger and different. You know how new characters like DLC characters get 4 unique feats? Well, Warden is basically getting that treatment, and so is Peacekeeper as well. So Peacekeeper's getting some buffs in that regard, and she's also got quite a few adjustments as well that has given her a little bit more viability if you've got the skills for it. If you also didn't remember, Zerker never had dodge cancel recoveries on every single move. He only had it on whiffed attacks, but now they just decided to buff him all right together, and they just made him into a Hyper Armor, Orochi, and Pirate. But granted, this is going to be the bane of him because he does get nerfed later on in 2024, pretty much recently. Medjai also has a new move that basically makes him a Bloodborne character, and I freaking love that. And I know a lot of people love Medjai, but a lot of people love to hate on him too. But just giving him that new move and allowing him to not just be a brain dead light into heavy spammer with hyper armor all day is just a great change in my opinion. I cannot tell you how happy I was to use transitional swaps or weapon attack swaps with this move, because I am the mummy enjoyer. He is just so satisfying to pull off. The animations are clean, even though he's basically a Walmart version of Berserker. I still think Magi is so cool with this new move, and I know a lot of people also don't like him specifically because what I've noticed is that characters that have an infinite chain move, a lot of people are just going to hate. Orochi, we had Raider, Orochi with the 3-chain light attacks. A lot of people hated that tremendously. And just infinite chain characters like Hitokiri, where they just spam one button. The Highlander rework was also incredible too. A lot of people enjoyed this, but I will say there was a few drawbacks. But overall, with the Highlander rework, which a lot of people have been asking for the past years, I think this has made him so much stronger and more viable in this meta. Does it make him a little bit more brain dead? Sure, but he was also pretty brain dead before anyways, because if you guys don't remember, his 2-chain light attacks, they all had hyper armor. Well, his chain light attack had hyper armor, but the neutral one already had question counter properties, and then you can go into his very fast 600 ms chain finisher. But they did remove Highlander's wave dashing, and a lot of Highlander mains were fairly upset with it, but they gave him so much more in the end. The Centurion buffs were also really nice too, because a lot of the times when you would charge your punches, a lot of the characters could just double dodge you, and then you would miss your entire mix-up. So now they decided to, you know, screw it, let's just make it a little bit faster, and so it catches people who double dodge. And Centurion, it's incredibly hard to fight in 1v1s and team fights where you're just getting hit by his punches 24/7. And mind you, he never had the parry into knee into guarantee punch before. Before, you would only allowed a knee attack after a parry follow-up, and that was pretty sick, right? But now you're allowed that punch to give you 22 damage for a heavy parry. Pretty ridiculous, since he is the wall splat king. And the Centurion mains are eating incredibly good. Strong character to pick right now. Probably the most base character we have. Incredibles to all my Centurion mains out there. Another crazy thing too is that Nuxia has finally been buffed in quite a few ways. A lot of people know that Nuxia is quite a tricky character to play. A lot of the top tier players will say that she's actually quite strong, S tier in duels. 4v4, a little bit weaker for sure, but does have some uses. Now, what they did with Nuxia was that they made it so her traps a little bit more unreactable. She still has chain 400 ms light attacks, which are really strong and scary if you're not paying attention. But of course, her finisher heavy is also wall splat. But what they did specifically to make her a lot more unpredictable was that they made her zone attack 500 ms. Before, it was at least 1000 ms. This is a very slow move that you could feint, but it had an amazing animation. Now they just gave her the 500 ms sweep, boom shakalaka, and then it goes into a very fast chain finisher heavy attack. And this is incredibly scary because it can be feinted, it can go into a trap mix-up, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with it yet. I personally don't even know how to deal with it yet because I've been so busy fighting the Lawbringer rework, the Warden rework, so many crazy things. A lot of people don't even play Nuxia in the first place. She's probably the least played character for a good reason too. And so this buff has, I'd say there's a lot more Nuxia mains out there right now. I'll tell you what, let me know if you guys figured out how to deal with this. My girl Warmonger also got buffed too, with their forward bash being much faster. On a heavy parry, you're allowed to get a forward bash into a light, so you get to do a little bit of bleed right there and then go into your chip mix-up damage on your light, your heavy, and all that good stuff. I really love that change for her. Makes her feel a lot more like a bleed character. And of course, if there's a wall nearby, just go for the impale anyways. But if there's no wall nearby, go for the bleed, because I really like that. It's super cool, and I think it gives her a lot more personality and skill expression. Those are some of the buffs that I remember that have been really influential when it comes to making the game feel a lot better to play, especially if you played those specific characters. A lot of the characters that we have gotten in the lower tiers, such as Gladiator, Warden, Peacekeeper, even Kensei, who got a buff on his unblockable heavy to make it so that you can't just light check him every single time. You had to go for a trade with the soft feint into light attack on his heavy finishers. And of course, even Aramusha got buffed too, with being able to target swap his Ring the Bell, which is pretty much useless. But they've been buffing a lot of the A tier characters to make them more viable against the top tier S tier characters. Every single DLC character has been wild in and pretty much easy to play. A very low skill floor, high skill curve, and a lot of the OGs just could not keep up. But now, with this entire year in the past year, For Honor has dedicated most of their time and balance on reworking characters and buffing feats to make them stand strong against some of the new DLC characters that they will be producing. So at the end of the day, they've been messing around with all of the old characters and just making them a lot stronger. Lawbringer, Conquer, hopefully in the future, Magi, Warden, all these characters are getting good buffs. Buffs have been a great thing for the lower tier characters. When it comes to the higher tier characters, however, this is a different story, and I think they've heard a lot of our complaints and have witnessed some of the cock and ball torture that we have endured. Remember when Afira was released and she had an infinite combo? Absolutely disgusting character. They haven't play tested this at all. I can guarantee you they don't even know what they're doing with the new characters. They're just trying to make a character that is strong and viable and that can be used in comp tournaments. Hitakiryu also was absolutely a menace. They buffed her thinking that she was a bad character. I don't know who they listened to. They probably listened to a Rep 80 Hitakiryu main, and they were like, you know what, this character does not have enough heavy attacks. Let's give them more heavies. Like, why would you buff this character? So they made it so Hitakiryu basically had infinite tracking and improved her hitboxes like crazy on her heavy attacks. The neat thing is that For Honor actually decided to listen to us. The devs finally decided to realize that, you know, we did something wrong here. Hitakiryu, however, finally had gotten nerfed, and so did Afira. Afira finally got her light hitboxes nerfed, which were egregious to deal with. She also got a bunch of damage nerfs as well because she has one of the best parry punishes in the game. But they did nerf it last year, where you're able to continuously use your tier 1 and tier 3 together. Is absolutely OP. Probably the worst, one of the worst experiences next to Warmonger release, with your tier 1 corruption affecting minions and just making the minion lane unplayable. Disgusting. And the thing is, Afira is still an incredibly strong character too, mind you. She's still incredibly strong, and there is sort of a mix-up. If you do use your tier 1 or your tier 3 and you have both of those feats active, people will try to empty dodge because the bash itself is 500 ms, so it's fairly fast. You can dodge 500 ms on reaction, but you really have to be looking out for it. So you can just empty GB and boom, you're screwed with the free GB into your chain mix-up, and then you can use your feat afterwards if they're not paying attention. And so they finally nerfed that about Afira. They also nerfed Hitakiryu. Finally, they nerfed her tracking. They reduced her health by 15, so now she's got an assassin health. Kind of insane for a heavy character, but mind you, she still has the heavy perks. And so those nerfs were definitely needed, but Hitakiryu still incredibly strong. I still go like 20-0 with her. It's absolutely disgusting. Some other great nerfs that happened were the side dodge bashes. So if you side dodge bash, now you weren't able to continue your heavy attacks or whatever moves you had afterwards, such as Shigoki, where you would side dodge bash and go into his hyper armor follow-up heavy attack. Absolutely cancer to deal with if you didn't have a dodge bash. Now they made it so that you can just GB anytime someone uses that and whiffs, a very huge window for you to guard break them and punish them, so it stops them from brain dead doing all that stuff. However, Shigoki is still a menace with his forward dodge bash. If you don't have a dodge bash in general, you're still going to get hit by the forward dodge bash into a heavy mix-up. So it's quite scary, but those are very good nerfs. They also did a bunch of bash speed changes, and they reduced the stamina drain on most of the bashes. There's still some characters that have bash drains, of course Gladiator, but his doesn't guarantee anything with his sucker punch. Warden still has it, I believe Warmonger still has it as well. Quite a few characters, but I'm assuming they're planning to get rid of this in the future, but right now they're mainly focusing on reworking feats, and that's a great thing. They also pretty much butchered Juggernaut. You still have hyper armor, but you only have 20% damage reduction, so if you think you're gonna win some trades, you're probably not going to. You have to think twice. Ki, nobody runs Ki anymore. Oathbreaker also got nerfed to an extent, so now you just have to wait a millisecond for them to pop it, and now they won't have any fun whatsoever. Spear Storm also got nerfed too. It's still one shots, it does a high amount of damage, but it absolutely doesn't kill somebody in revenge anymore, because he used to do that all the time. Fire Flash also got nerfed too, making it deal less raw damage, and that's a good thing. We also cannot forget about the Orochi, the Ocelot, the Varangian, and Shaman nerfs that had happened, okay? Orochi nerf Basically, his Storm Rush on both of his sides, left and right heavies, they aren't undodgeable anymore. For the higher tier players, Orochi's still going to remain relatively the same. They're just going to use the top one anyways because that acts as a pin and it gets some nasty ganks set up. So Orochi's still an incredible menace, but they did nerf his speed on his finisher side heavies, which meant before you would just have to take that hit. You couldn't flip it as BP, you would just have to block it. Every single character you had to respect it and do nothing. Now Orochi's side heavy finishers, they deal less damage and they essentially don't, actually I think the finisher one, they nerfed that damage on that, but the side heavy finishers, you can now, if you do get hit by if you block a dodge attack from the Orochi or you get hit by, you can now block and flip the finisher side heavy now. Before you would just have to block it and take chip damage. And also a big nerf in general to the meta was that people who had a lot of side dodge spam moves who could target swap like Orochi, Berserker, and of course Pirate, now Orochi and Zerker, their dodge attacks are not enhanced anymore, so they're not allowed to freely rotate around you and get into their offense. They're stopped in their tracks, and this allows for the other teammate to punish you for doing that. So kind of crazy nerf in my opinion. Very, very crazy nerf. Shaman also got pretty significantly nerfed as well. Last season, well actually it was last couple of patches, Shaman was able to get a bash on a heavy parry. So if you parried someone, usually you'd go for a heavy into bleed, but now you can essentially go for a bite. So it's kind of crazy. You could go into a heavy parry and bash them into a wall splat for a heavy attack or into a bleed, but if they were already bleeding, you get a guarantee bite on a heavy parry. Absolutely insane. I have no idea who was in charge of this buff for Shaman, but that is just not the way. I had a lot of fun doing it, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was playing it as much as possible before it got nerfed because I knew it was not staying in the game. A lot of people hate Shaman because of her soft feints, which are 400 MS on all sides. There's no more blue for Orochi, there's no more free bites for Shaman, and Varangian also got nerfed too. So Varangian nerfed on the crushing counter properties, they're standardized, and the chain link timings on our light attacks are also standardized. So Ocelotl also got nerfed as well, so his bash, actually he got nerfed 2 times, which is kind of insane. So the first rework, or the first iteration of Ocelotl was his bash did damage. You can go into a 4MS chain light attack or another bash, all that good stuff, but they just removed the ability to deal damage with his bash, and now it's just a bash light into a 9 damage light attack. But now if you missed your chain bash, which did direct damage, you couldn't follow up, and this was Warden's nightmare. This was Warden's counter. I think a lot of Warmains are super happy about Ocelotl just getting butchered, but he's still a ridiculously good character with his tier 1 and his strong ganks. So those are some of the biggest balance changes that I personally remember. If there's anything good that would bring other players back to coming back to For Honor, because Orochi, Ocelotl, Varangian, Shaman nerfs are pretty huge, I think that would bring a lot of players back because a lot of these characters are hated in the For Honor community. They were just absolutely despised. I'll tell you what, just absolutely despised. Honestly, I really think we received some amazing content. Even though it hasn't been as much as, say, year 1 or year 2, we really can't complain as much. I think we're allowed to complain since we paid for this game and we're supporting it 24/7. We're allowed to have constructive criticism, but the For Honor dev team surely have put in quite a bit of work. We get amazing battle pass weapons. We get actually mediocre executions. I'm not gonna lie to you, they have been pretty hit and miss. I'll tell you what, the new Jormungandr one is pretty insane. The Zhenhu one is top tier. I think we're allowed to say that some of the executions are just dog shit. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Some of them are just awful. I don't know who designed it, but you guys are terrible. and I hate to be a bearer of bad news, but you know, you have to call out stupid shit. You just have to. But I'd say we've had overall amazing skins. I know a lot of people don't like the Jormungandr skin, but I love it because Warlord and a little bit of Valkyrie. Valkyrie has a few good sets, but I mean, those characters are pretty mid when it comes to the fashion department. I think even Zerker is bottom 3 as well. Warlord is probably up there in the bottom 3, but those guys are just absolutely the worst looking characters in the game. I've made my Warlords look pretty amazing, and I've seen some good Warlords too, but overall, man, it's pretty mid. And with the new skin that changes his outfit to a story character, I'm all for it, honestly. I am all for it. Is it worth like $10? Probably not. Is it worth 20 24k steel. Maybe if you got some money, but if they nerfed it down to like 15k steel, I'd say that's a good deal in my opinion. The Destiny collab skins have also been really great too, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't like Destiny, and a lot of people don't like the aesthetics of the skin, but guys, come on, man. I think Destiny was willing to collab with For Honor because it's also a dying game as well. Destiny stooped to For Honor's level. What's another game that's going to stoop to For Honor's level? Maybe Siege, perhaps? Or even Overwatch would probably stoop to For Honor's level. They're both in the same category of cock and ball torture games, in my opinion. Maybe even Concord might even do a collab with For Honor, right? And I really like the skins. I think they put a lot of work into it. They had a lot of artists work on that and make it feel more in line in the For Honor universe. Okay, another great thing that they added was the 1v1v1 mode, and this was an insane mode because it also added a new skin. It was the Unsung Knight skin for Warden. Absolutely beautiful. I love the skin. I think it was a great addition to For Honor, and I hope they bring it back as a permanent mode. And that brings me to another discussion where we talk about, 4v4 tribute and brawls and other game modes being viable. So my idea is that we just remove tribute altogether and add the free-for-all mode that was given to us. Another thing that I wanted to do was that for brawls, as you know, a lot of the high tier players will try to do real brawls, which is real 2v2s, where you just fight in team fights and have a certain synergy, a certain character that can do ganks and team fights. But if you're, more of like a solo queue player, or even if you're just wanting to play with your friend and relax and do 1v1s, because 1v1s are fairly relaxing, you can have some fun, whereas team fighting is incredibly stressful. You have to peel, you have to rely on your teammate, because there's just so many things going on, honestly. A lot of characters are team fight characters, where in 1v1s, you can just focus on red, focus on animations, and it's fairly relaxing. You just chat with your friend. But in 2v2, which is real brawls, you are either going to fight toxic individuals who are gank you afterwards, or you will just go into 2v2s with a real brawl setup, and you won't be able to play duels with your friends. So I promote that there should be 2 different setups for brawls, one for real brawls and one for 1v1 brawls, so you can play with your friends. I think a lot of people enjoy this style. It's not just a honor situation where people are trying to be as honorable as possible and waiting for them to execute and whatnot. You can just avoid all of the toxicity and all the mess of the person trying to get an advantage on you if you decide to execute someone, because a lot of times people will just heavy attack on you when you decide to execute to get some health back. So to avoid all of that, there should be like an invisible barrier or a separated map area, and then you guys go into a Coliseum afterwards for the last 1v1 for the people that did win the duels. And I think that'd be quite interesting. We've also gotten amazing new maps. Now granted, these are repurposed maps, but I don't even care because first of all, I barely get to play eliminations, and those maps ridiculously good, I'll tell you what. And so they brought in the maps and they reworked the entire map so that it could work as a Dominion map, and that's just freaking amazing. I'm glad they finally decided to do that, and hopefully we get more of the good ones very soon, because I can't wait to see more of those Japanese ones, or maybe even use some Breach maps, because those maps are pretty much dead too, because all we fight in Breach are bots. And the last thing I really want to talk about, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but every single player that has played this game for a certain amount of time and loves it knows that I'm telling the truth, and it's something that Ubisoft needs to do, or maybe Tencent when Ubisoft is going to go broke, because Ubisoft is broke right now. They got no money. They got no money to fix anything, I'll tell you that much. So what they need to do, fix servers, give us a backfill system, give us a system where solo queue players aren't necessarily matched against 4 stacks, because 4 stacks in this game are going too crazy. Ganking is so powerful these days. The only time you 4 stack, there are some situations where you can win against a 4 stack, but that's very few and far between. You need some really good solo queue players, and you need a really good duo queue player if you're actually playing with a friend. But even so, I think duo queue players should be able to match with solo queue, while solo queue players should not be able to match with 4 stacks at all, because this is just an experience that is going to be ruined instantly, because most of the random players, they're not going to be the highest tier of levels. There's only a small percentile of players that actually know about rotation, ganks, revenge tags. Pretty much makes For Honor into an incredibly sweaty game in a 4v4 mode where you have to synergize with your team. One person messing up means the entire team is most likely going to lose, especially at a high level setting. So without any good players on your team, or even players that are competent enough to deal with ganks or stalls, there's just no way you can win. And at that point, it's just a stomp, and it's just not that fun. I don't know why they haven't done anything about that. Maybe in the future they can, but I would love it to get separated, because solo queue players just stand zero chance against 4 stacks. You can do your best, you can get some nice plays, but overall you're gonna lose. And for me, I don't mind that, but I know a lot of players that don't have time to play this 12 hours a day and have jobs. They're not going to have fun with that. And in addition to that, I think just getting the standard amount of heroes and skins for next year is perfectly fine with me. Focusing more on the feats, focusing on reworks, and nerfing characters down. I think whatever they're doing, they should just keep doing it. And this is pretty much the end of the video. I really like the direction of where the devs have started taking For Honor. There obviously are going to be a few changes that I will disagree with, but I'd say at the grand scheme of things, things look pretty freaking good right now. All the characters are fairly balanced. The only issue that I'm going to see in the future is that all the DLC characters are going to have almost every single tool, and I really think that's a bad idea, because it sets For Honor up for failure, because all the characters aren't going to be alike, and that's something that I think we should avoid. Not every character needs to fill every single role. We have Pirate who does so much. I want to avoid that and make it so that there's more specialized characters and characters that feel different from one another. So let me know your thoughts down below on what you guys want to see in the future, and what you guys think For Honor has come to overall in the state of, 2024 gaming. Like, do you think it's been really good, or just absolutely terrible that you'll never come back? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, guys. More good stuff coming very soon. Bye bye. See you later.